Do you want to save money at the grocery store, eat more organic, whole foods, cultivate food security, and feel more connected to the earth? If so, then growing your own food is a no-brainer. You wouldn't believe how many people come to me claiming that they can't grow their own food. They think they don't have enough space, that they're too busy, or that they simply don't have what it takes. Perhaps you've fallen for one of these gardening myths. If you think you can't grow food, or if you think the only food that you have access to is what you buy in the grocery store, I have a life-changing webinar that you need to see. It's free and will help you unearth your inner gardener. I've helped thousands of people just like you learn to grow their own food, and I'm speaking from my own experience when I say that with the right knowledge in place, there is no such thing as a black thumb. With this webinar, you can begin making your garden dreams come true and start growing delicious, nutritious food for your family. Just text GARDEN to 44222 or go to iwanttogarden.com and you will receive our free webinar about the 7 key factors you need to know to grow your own food. Remember, that's GARDEN to 44222 or iwanttogarden.com.
You're listening to the Urban Farm Podcast, your partner in the Grow Your Own Food revolution. Whether you've just been introduced to urban farming or you're a lifelong advocate, we're sure you'll leave feeling more informed, equipped, and empowered to dig deeper into the soil of your local food economy. With you every step of the way, here's your host, Greg Peterson.
Today on the Urban Farm Podcast, we have Matt Gordon to talk about his experience with Rogue Farm Corps and Cully Neighborhood Farm. Originally from Eugene, Oregon, Matt grew up helping his parents in the family vegetable garden and has always had an affinity for soil. How cool is that? He has worked as a garden and environmental educator for many Portland, Oregon organizations, including Growing Gardens and Tryon Life Community Farm. In 2008, Matt shifted focus and devoted his time to organic annual vegetable production, working with Merriweather's restaurant on their Skyline Farm, and then on his own farm business, the Urban CSA from Cully Neighborhood Farm. In 2014, he also became the Portland chapter coordinator for Rogue Farm Corps, a nonprofit dedicated to training the next generation of farmers through hands-on farm internships in Oregon. Matt loves discovering delicious vegetable varieties and helping develop a new crop of young farmers. Welcome to the show today, Matt.
Thanks so much, Greg. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you're here. So I just shared a bit about you. Can you fill in the blanks for us and share more about the path you took to get to where you're at now?
Sure, I'll do my best there. So like you mentioned, I'm from Oregon, and I grew up kind of in a small hippie college town, Eugene, Oregon, and there was lots of great things going on in this arena already with an amazing farmers market. And my parents loved to work outside. So I had sort of some steps in the right direction, I feel like, when I was growing up. But I didn't really know that much about gardening and growing things. I mean, I had a little exposure. Then I went off to college in Ohio, did environmental studies, and kind of saw all the details of all the negative impacts we're having on our environment.
Yeah, there is that.
So got pretty impassioned, but I still didn't know exactly where I wanted to fit into trying to create solutions to those things.
Right.
But I did want to return to Oregon, so I came back and moved to Portland in 2002, and did an AmeriCorps year with doing education with kids around restoration, gardening, water quality testing, lots of different things.
How cool is that? Thanks for doing that, man.
Oh yeah, and it was fun to kind of get my toes dipped into a lot of different environmental type work.
Yeah, I'll bet.
And then from there, I moved on to focus more on the gardening side, but still in education with Growing Gardens, which is a local nonprofit here that does a lot of great work. But I was doing specifically the children's garden programming that they do after school gardens and such. And so, working with kids was new to me, but also gardening was new to me. So I was learning a ton. and also having home gardens for the first time in my life. And that really caught me. I really loved
Oh, yes.
just trying things on my own and seeing what I could grow. And of course, most of my first gardens, there were way more failures than successes.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
I understand that one.
yeah, but those are great because as long as you're paying attention, you really learn a lot from it. So
Can you?
I kind go ahead.
I want to ask. You said something curious. I want to ask you about it. It said, and I want you to say more about that. You said if you're paying attention, say more about that.
Well, it's sort of like life, right? If you're paying attention when things go wrong
Mm-hmm.
and you take a moment to reflect, then those mistakes can really inform, the future course that you take. So, and especially as gardeners, as farmers, paying attention is like your primary job. Your
Right.
observation is really your best tool to have in your pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So honing that every season, every year, every day that you're in the garden, um, just helps so much. I mean, they say, there's that old saying, like the farmer's feet are the best fertilizer.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Because if you're walking out in your fields or your gardens, you're noticing things that are going on,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can actually do things about them if there's things that are not going so well. If
Right.
you're just sort of plant things and leave them alone, then obviously you're not going to get as great results. So paying attention, being consistent with your, what you do in your garden and that kind of thing is very helpful. I mean, that's kind of goes for life, I guess, in general, too.
Yeah, it really does. It really is. And sorry, I jumped in halfway through your story. So
Oh, no,
carry
that's
on.
okay. So I guess I got pretty inspired to do more of the growing side of things and less of the education side of things. I liked working with kids, but I didn't feel like I was maybe the best person to really do that full time.
Uh-huh.
So I took a permaculture course in Eugene with
Oh,
Jude
wow.
Hobbs and Toby Hemingway.
Oh, my gosh.
Great teachers.
Great, great teachers. Yes, absolutely.
And then I moved into an intentional community in Portland called Try on Life Community Farm that had just bought this 7-acre parcel that was going to be developed into 20 homes, but they basically saved it from development and are still creating a kind of intentional community permaculture teaching site,
Mm-hmm.
all these kind of things.
Wow.
And so I lived there for 2 years, and I was one of the main gardeners there, and I did some youth education work there as well. And it's nestled right into the Tryon Creek State Park, which is one of the largest state parks in the city. So it's still in the city of Portland, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it's about 750 acres of really
Wow.
beautiful forest. And this little 7 acres is right on the edge of it. So it's quite a unique site being still in the city. And you really feel like you're in the woods.
Hmm.
So that was
Nice.
kind of a magical time in my life. But at the same time, the community living aspect, it has its challenges, and I learned a lot from it. But
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, I really kind of kept honing in on what I wanted to do, and I really wanted to get more into how can I grow more food more efficiently.
Right.
And so I got a job on a farm, a vegetable farm that was owned by a restaurant, Meriwether's Restaurant in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
And they own their own farm and they produce as much of their own vegetables as they can from that
Nice.
farm property. I got to learn from some great farmers who were managing that piece of property. I was, hired on as general farm laborer at first, and then worked my way up into assistant manager and then manager after 4 to 5 years
Mm-hmm.
during my time there. And I just loved it. I fell in love with farming and growing vegetables on a more production scale. And, I know that's not for everybody, but for me, it really just hit home that I love being out here doing this labor, this hands-on work. You just get into nice rhythms with working with people, being able to chat in the field, but also
Right.
you really feel productive. And that's
Mm-hmm.
something that really, I guess, I don't know, drives who I am. I like that feeling of feeling like I'm getting a lot done right now.
Yeah.
So I was there for 5 years. And the other thing, I think a lot of people get burned out when they try working on a farm because it's a lot of work,
It is a lot of work.
many hours.
Yes.
But I was only working 3 days a week, and that's how we kept that farm schedule, is 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And
Mm-hmm.
so it had that ability to kind of let you explore other things during your other time. And for me, I was exploring more farming. I was starting my own farm business in town. The farm was a little bit outside of town, but I was still living in town, and started my own farm with a friend on an empty urban lot of about 1 acre that's owned by a church, and became Cully Neighborhood Farm, which is still going today.
Nice.
I transitioned off the restaurant farm, and for the past 5 years or so, I guess this was our 6th season at Cully Neighborhood Farm. So the first couple years was just part-time, and then I went full-time. Since 2012, I've been running a CSA there, which I think probably most of your listeners know what that is, but it's
I was gonna say, jump in and say a little bit about that, and tell us about yours. Just what is a CSA, and tell us about yours.
Sure. So CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture, and it's a form of where eaters and consumers of food can support a particular farm operation with an advance payment for future product from that farm. So
cool.
It really helps build that relationship between eater and farmer, and it helps the farmer to have that financial security up front in the season when normally there's a lot of farm expenses but not a lot of farm income because they haven't actually produced the things that they're growing yet. Oftentimes, for a vegetable CSA, you start signing people up in January, February, receiving payments then, but you're not delivering them produce until, say, mid-May or June. So it really helps bridge that financial gap.
Nice.
And it's kind of just this baseline financial security throughout the season, but it also, it's more than a financial commitment. It's sort of, what I want to say, sort of like a relationship builder, community.
Exactly.
Builder. So the CSA members can get to know each other through when they pick up their food. Mine actually, CSA members come and pick up their weekly boxes of produce at the farm. So they can see what's growing at the farm, see how the farm changes week to week, and they can meet each other if they happen to be there at the same time.
Right. So you're servicing pretty much the neighborhood around you then.
That's the idea. So usually most of my folks that have signed up for the CSA are either living or working in the neighborhood or in the general vicinity of Northeast Portland.
Yeah.
So. And I might add that my neighborhood, the Cully neighborhood, is sort of an interesting place for urban agriculture. There's a lot of big lots still left. So I have a half-acre lot that's about 1 block away from my farm, which is a whole 1-acre lot.
Right.
So between the two, it can actually do a decent amount of production.
Oh, yeah. I'm not a serious farmer. I'm a serious educator, but we have a 1/4 acre here at the urban farm and right in the middle of Phoenix, Arizona, and I grow a lot of food on a 1/4 acre.
Oh, yeah. You really can. It's amazing when you get into sort of this more intensive type of gardening or agriculture, how much food you can get out of it. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I went from 12 CSA shares when I started to the last season I did it, I had about 40 CSA shares. Nice.
Congratulations. That's I know it's a lot of work, but it's also really cool you're doing that.
Yeah, thank you. It's fun. It goes from May through the end of November, and every week people get a smattering of diverse, high quality produce from their neighborhood. So
cool. So tell us about your work with the Rogue Farm Corps.
Right. So this is a job that I picked up about a year ago. It's part-time, so it still allows me to farm my own farm. And the Rogue Farm Corps is a nonprofit that started in Southern Oregon about 10 years ago with a mission to create, help train the next generation of farmers. And the reason that is needed is because there's a lot of older farmers out there, and the average age of a farmer, I believe, is about 68 in this country.
Something like that, exactly.
And it just keeps getting older.
Yep.
And as you can imagine, all that land that they're stewarding is going to change hands. In the next 5 to 10 years, I think the estimate is about maybe 25 to 50% of all farmland is going to change hands.
Yes.
And that's a lot of acres. And if you can imagine, if we have trained young farmers being trained in sustainable agriculture practices, being willing to get into some of those opportunities, what a huge
You're right.
change in our food system we can have.
I'm sitting over here. I'm sitting over just shaking my head. Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah, it's so necessary. So, obviously that land is going to change hands to somebody. So we want to make sure that there's people trained in ecological techniques that can have the ability to steward that land well. So that's the idea, and we do that through on-farm internships with existing commercial farm operations who are already using ecological or organic or very sustainable practices. And we work with farms producing livestock, producing vegetables, fruit, seed farms, perennial herbs. It's all in Oregon. We have 4 geographical chapters, one in Portland, one in Southern Oregon, one in Central Oregon, and one in the mid-Willamette Valley around Eugene.
Wow.
So I'm the Portland coordinator, and I had our first season in the Portland chapter last year. We had 5 host farms up here, and we had 8 interns go through our program last year, and they work and live alongside their host farms full time. And then in addition to that, we do a bunch of classes and farm tours for them throughout the season. So they get to see a lot of different farm operations in the area, and then take classes from expert farmers, extension agents, and other agricultural professionals to really help them jumpstart their potential future careers into agriculture, or at least educate them in a really deep way about what it is to grow a lot of good food. So that's sort of what I do part-time, and then I still keep the farm going part-time. And I'm going to actually have to employ some people this coming season because I can't keep the farm going to the level I want it to just by myself on a couple days a week.
Do you use the interns from Rogue Farm Corps?
I don't, because the way the program with Rogue Farm Corps is set up is that it's a really full-time immersive experience.
Oh, right.
And you have to provide housing, and I don't really have. So I won't, first of all, be able to supervise them full-time, and second of all, I don't really have the housing set up.
Got it. Cool.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's actually, for about the past year, I've had my thinking cap on doing something like that here in Phoenix, because you're right that we have a challenge in the coming decades of running out of farmers.
We do. We really do. And there's so many farmers that are they're in charge of so many acres. I mean, and in some places maybe that makes sense depending on what they're growing.
Right.
But in some places I could see that perhaps breaking some of those larger farms into some smaller parcels that could be stewarded in a more appropriate and ecological way, because someone's paying more attention to the details of that land. Yeah. So I think we need even more farmers than we have now.
Big time.
So
big time, absolutely. So I'm going to shift a little bit here. I'm going to ask you a question about a time that you failed, how you overcame that failure, and what did you learn from it?
Sure. So 2 things came to mind. One is, these are both gardening related.
Perfect.
Things here. So in my gardening experience and farming experience, it's easy to let the weeds get the better of you because you feel like you need to keep planting things for the schedule. I have a crop plan that I work out in the winter and try to stick to because I have these production goals for the CSA. I want to keep people with a diverse array of vegetables throughout the season. So I keep planting different things throughout the season. But when you do that, it's easy to say, well, I don't have time to go back and weed that bed. But if you do, which I've done for a number of years, I mean, I try to stay up on top of the weeds as much as I can. But if you do that and the weeds go to seed, you're just shooting yourself in the foot for the next year. So
that is
I've
the
done
case.
that, a couple times. And now the weed pressure on my farm is way more than it used to be. And so I've learned a lot from that. I mean, I knew that it's always best to get your weeds when they're little because it's easier. You can go through with a hoe really quickly and knock them out. They're the same plant as when they're 2 feet tall as when they're like half a centimeter tall. It's the one plant. I mean, it's a lot easier to knock it out with a from a standing position with a piece of metal attached to a long handle than when you're on your hands and knees yanking this same one plant out when it's 2 feet tall and about to spill seeds everywhere. So, staying on top of your weeds should be just as much of a priority as keeping your planting successions going, and getting them when they're small. So that's one thing.
I want to stop you here though for a second, because that's a great one to look at. What if we looked at that metaphorically? Do you have anything to say about that?
Oh, well,
the metaphoric weeds in our lives.
Yeah, I think any sort of little problems, little annoyances, little frustrations that you encounter in your daily life, if you let it fester, it can turn into a large frustration, right? Yeah. So, and spill over into other aspects of our lives, and just way easier to nip it in the bud and address those things when they start coming up.
Small. Yeah.
When they're small. Yeah.
Have you ever thought about, here's just an idea. Have you ever thought about having a weed pulling party for your CSA?
Yeah, I do actually work with volunteers at the farm a bit. I started this partnership with another nonprofit, Grow Portland, that does community farming drop-in hours. So basically, they contracted with me to have these regular volunteer drop-in hours for the farm, where anyone can show up and I can plug them into farm tasks, including weeding, which is definitely a big farm task, especially just certain times of the year. But other things too, transplanting, harvesting. Those are some of the big ones.
Perfect. And again, I cut you off. You said two things came to mind on the failure, so I want to make sure that we revisit that.
Oh, right. So the other one that I'm thinking about a lot from this past year, one of the things that I feel like I've learned is to really pay attention to pest issues. So one of the pest issues we have up here a lot, I don't know if you have it in Arizona much, but is aphids.
Oh, yes.
We have aphids on our kale pretty regularly in the summer.
Right.
And then this year was especially hot up here. We had a lot of whiteflies as well.
Oh, yes.
Kind of piggybacking on the kale that the aphids were already on.
Yeah.
So I am learning a lot around what options there are around sort of companion planting flowers to attract beneficial insects into those plantings. So one of the local other urban farms around here had a lot of success with planting. I think it's alyssum is another brassica like kale.
Yep.
Interplanting that in their kale beds, and they said in the kale planting they did that with, there was virtually no aphid pressure.
Wow.
And then in the kale plantings they didn't do that in the same year, there was a lot of aphid damage. So that's something I've definitely learned, and I'm going to be experimenting a lot with this kind of season.
So what do you consider one of your biggest successes?
Yeah, so I think for me, just creating this CSA farm that is part of how I make my financial livelihood on a small plot of urban land, to me, is a large success.
That's huge. I say that's huge. That's amazing that you can do that and that you've done that.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that I'm making a ton of money on it. I mean, there's more successful farmers out there for sure, but I'm still relatively new farmer, and I've been able to, pay myself, and that's something to be said for that. Now, I don't own the land, so that's one thing, and I have a very generous lease agreement with the church that owns the land.
Right.
So there's some things going in my favor, but I think that just having this model where I can help provide for my family with a business that I feel is really ecologically sound, as well as providing increasing community and community food security in my neighborhood. So I really feel good about that. I mean, it's still a work in progress, of course, as all businesses and projects are, farm projects especially. But I love the work that I do, and I feel good. I feel that every year it's gotten better in terms of what I've been able to produce, as well as, the financial return. So
Yeah.
that's good. And, I don't mean to focus on the financial aspect, but I feel like if you're trying to make your living off of doing this kind of work, it is something that becomes a big focus.
Yeah.
Uh, for better or worse.
Right.
It is part of the picture, and it's something to pay attention to.
Well, and it has to be. I mean, we live in a culture where we need to make a living in order to get by. The downside, however, to farming is that farming's not about making a lot of money.
Right.
I don't think. You work hard, you live a fulfilling life, and if you make some money along the way, yay.
Yeah.
So.
Right. I mean, and I think, as a society, we'd be way better off if more people were just growing more of their own food, like I imagine a lot of your listeners are. And whether they're making any extra money off it is sort of beside the point. It's, they're taking some of their financial needs out of the picture because they're providing some of that they would otherwise have had to go to the store and buy.
Right.
And I think that is really the key to where we're headed. Now, in the meantime, and, into the future, there will always be people who won't be able to do that. Or won't want to for whatever reason. So there will always be a niche for, farmers who are really providing a lot of food for other people,
right,
as well, for sale.
Absolutely.
Or for trade. I mean, I do trade as well. I like trading things that I would otherwise go and buy for food. So
yeah, perfect. All right. So deep question. What drives you? Like, what's your big why?
Well, I think what makes this keep working for me is that I just really love the physical work. I love working with my hands. I love the satisfaction of seeing things grow that I planted. I like building things, sheds or trellises, getting stuff done. Like I mentioned before, I just really love that feeling of productivity.
Seeing, no pun intended, really, seeing the fruits of your labor.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And then also, I also really like working with people and seeing myself grow through that experience and others gain knowledge and wisdom. I mean, myself and others gain knowledge and wisdom and experience through these hands-on experiences of working with the soil, working with plants, learning from people who have done this their whole lives or for a long time. I mean, that's part of the Rogue Farm Corps part is the more the educational aspect of what I love about this is, and like yourself, you're an educator as well, it sounds like. So this is really a big part of why I do what I do as well, is seeing other people grow through these experiences is just incredibly gratifying to me.
Yeah. I'm all about education, as you mentioned. And I have to know, is there one book that has been most influential for you in your life?
It's hard to pin it down to one. I would say that the one that's just been on my mind for the past couple years is The Intelligent Gardener by Steve Solomon.
Okay.
I don't know if you've read that one.
I haven't, but I'm going to go look it up now.
It's really a nerdy book about soil chemistry, but for some reason, I just love that stuff. And it has a bigger picture to it. I mean, the reason it's all about soil chemistry is because it's all about growing nutrient-dense food. So not just growing food, but nutrient-dense food. Yeah. So getting the nutrition that we need as humans to thrive and be healthy in this world is becoming harder and harder because you don't know what the health of the soil was that food was grown in.
Exactly.
So if you can have some control over that by growing your own food, you can really have an increased effect on your health and your family's health. And so he goes into a lot of amazing detail about soil testing and then analyzing those soil test results, because if those nutrients that the plants need aren't in proper quantities in the soil, they're not going to be in the proper quantities in the plants. And then they're not going to be in the proper quantities in our bodies. It's all related. Exactly. It's just this cycle. Yeah. So he goes into an incredible amount of detail, and then way more so than you could ever imagine about all that. So I love that book.
Fantastic.
And he's a great writer. And he, the Growing Vegetables West of the Cascades is another earlier book that he wrote. But he's
interesting.
Continued to update throughout the years. And that was probably the earlier one that turned me on to him and his work.
Cool. So one final piece of advice for our listeners.
I think, starting small is always good. So, or even if you have already started, if you're considering expand small, do one thing at a time. And the thing you're most excited about, I think, really makes a lot of sense. So, because what you're excited about is going to, enliven your spirit and make you want to learn more about it. So,
Right.
so keep things simple, small. Start one or two things at a time each year, and then keep some records on those things, so to kind of track how you did.
Yeah.
Whether it's planting and harvest dates, harvest yields. I mean, those are the things that I think about. But depending on the person and the project, that could be a totally different kind of record keeping. But those are just an example. So, but keeping some consistent records really allows you to evaluate what you've done in your systems, so that over time you can kind of increase your yields, your efficiency, and just the general system, improve the general system as you go.
Perfect. So thank you so much. How can our listeners get a hold of you?
For sure. Thank you so much for having me. So my farm website is Cully Neighborhood Farm. That's Cully neighborhoodfarm.com. And I have a blog going back a couple years with pictures of CSA shares and
Nice.
Recipes and just stories from the farm days. The nonprofit Rogue Farm Corps that helps train new farmers. If people are interested in having an internship experience, that's a really interesting opportunity to check out. We're accepting applications right now. That's roguefarmcorps.org. So ROGUE farm corps CORPS.org. And we have a great video that was just made that it kind of outlines the experience. It's a 6 to 8 month long experience on a farm in Oregon. I mean, we have a lot of farms that we work with, so it's definitely something for folks if they're interested in having a really immersive full-time experience for a full season on a farm that's doing some great sustainable agriculture work. I would encourage folks to check that out. And I'm the Portland chapter coordinator, so I'm Matt at roguefarmcorps.org is my email address there.
Fantastic. So just an aside here, if somebody was living somewhere not in Oregon and they wanted to come in from New York or Japan or from wherever, this program is set up for that, right?
Yeah, definitely we get applicants from all over. We do have people from all over the country who apply and get accepted to positions. We have an opportunity to work with another organization to accept international applicants, but they do have to go through a program called MESA, MESA.
Oh, yes, I know somebody on the board.
Okay, yeah, so they can help get the visas and all the legal requirements figured out. So yeah, no, it's a great opportunity. You don't have to be from Oregon; you can be from wherever.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show and sharing your experience with us today, Matt. It's been a treat getting to chat with you and hearing your experience around CSAs and urban farming and the like.
Thanks so much, Greg. It's been my pleasure.
Absolutely. That's it for today. Thanks for joining us on the Urban Farm Podcast. Interested in learning more and taking control of your food future? Text Urban Farm to 33444 to sign up for our weekly urban farming newsletter. Jam-packed with urban farming tips, stories from people just like you learning to urban farm, and free classes, the Urban Farm Lifestyle Newsletter will equip you to join the urban farming revolution. Text Urban Farm to 33444. Do you want to save money at the grocery store? Eat more organic, whole foods? Cultivate food security and feel more connected to the earth? If so, then growing your own food is a no-brainer. You wouldn't believe how many people come to me claiming that they can't grow their own food. They think they don't have enough space, that they're too busy, or that they simply don't have what it takes. Perhaps you've fallen for one of these gardening myths. If you think you can't grow food, or if you think the only food that you have access to is what you buy in the grocery store, I have a life-changing webinar that you need to see. It's free and will help you unearth your inner gardener. I've helped thousands of people just like you learn to grow their own food, and I'm speaking from my own experience when I say that with the right knowledge in place, there is no such thing as a black thumb. With this webinar, you can begin making your garden dreams come true and start growing delicious, nutritious food for your family. Just text GARDEN to 44222 or go to iwanttogarden.com and you will receive our free webinar about the 7 key factors you need to know to grow your own food. Remember, that's GARDEN to 44222 or iwanttogarden.com.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen 3 days a week for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.